So who's hungry now? You're hungry? Yeah. So I'll finish this as soon as possible. So before I begin, may I know any Angular developers here? Awesome. I'm also an Angular developer, so first of all, yeah, all right. Yeah, I have a couple of things to say, so I'll say that after the session then. Yeah. Alright, containerizing JavaScript application. So, you already know me. Chandu gave me an awesome introduction. Thanks. Uh, so, importance of containerization. So, this is a very huge topic, and it's not gonna be easy to actually complete this in like 10 minutes. So, I'm gonna be as simple as possible. So, before I begin, I'll ask from you guys who knows about Docker and stuff, who works with Docker? Anyone? Alright, alright. Set of notes here. Okay. Okay, so I'll make this relatable to JavaScript as much as possible. So, any Windows users here? Alright, we have a few. Alright, so here's a question for you. So, say you have Node 10 on your machine, and you have an application, a legacy application that runs on Node 6 only, and it crashes on Node 10. What are you going to do? Does Windows have NVM?
Yes.
Okay, I thought that it doesn't have NVM. Okay. So yeah. But yeah, for the most part, I think Windows didn't have NVM. Yeah, now they have IDs. Yeah. So basically, what Docker does is, yeah, it allows portability. It allows you to contain your application and run it in an isolated process, so that you could have multiple environments, and you could run the application on your machine regardless of the OS of the machine. You can run it perfectly, and you could work with it. You could do your development. You could actually run it on production servers, everything. So the next question is, how do you deploy your application? Node.js or front-end applications? Do you use virtual machines? Show of hands of the guys who use virtual machines. All right. Well, I mean, what do you the rest of the guys use? You guys go serverless with cloud function or something? What do you use? Oh, you haven't actually deployed applications at all to the production, is it? Okay. So usually there are a couple of ways. Physical servers, meaning that you have the server physically. Else you use virtual machines, or you go serverless with AWS Lambda, Cloud Functions, Heroku, or something else. So, going serverless is good. It's the next step from containerization. So that's really good. But physical servers and virtual machines, they are not really good. They're very bad. One of the reasons is, take a VM. If you hypothetically imagine a scenario of Python, imagine Python. So in Python, you have to actually create virtual environments, and there's a whole mess of things that you have to do. You can run Python 2 and Python 3 all together with so many libraries shared with the two. So it's really hard. So imagine if NPM doesn't exist, how would you do it? I mean, you can't do that. So that's where actually VMs are bad for you. And also imagine a situation where your VM hangs. Your VM hangs, and there's nothing much you can do, right? All you can do is restart the VM, and then there's a downtime. And your users are like gonna be refreshing the page again and again, unless they have Chatu's offline first application. Your application is gonna have a downtime. So another thing is, say you have a couple of environments. Say your server, you're migrating from AWS to DigitalOcean or Google Cloud or something like that, some other cloud provider. Then you have to reconfigure your VM again, unless you use Vagrant or something. I mean, it's going to be a pain in the ass, right? I mean, you have to actually reconfigure. You have to install the proper libraries. You always have to Google the DigitalOcean blog and see how to install Node 6 or Node 10 on your virtual machine and see how it works. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. But containers are the solution for this. So this is the major thing that containers solve. It allows you to run it allows you portability, and it allows you to run your isolated processes, so that your application is contained inside a virtual machine or wherever it's run, and it allows you to have other containers and other processes running as well in the same environment in a contained space. So that's where, that's the starting point of containers. It's a huge topic, and a lot of things you can do with containers, but I hope you get the gist. Yeah, so why Docker? So portability, yeah, all of these things, security, simplicity, modularity, lightweight, all of these things comes with Docker. So you must be thinking, why Docker, right? So Docker is like the most famous container management, container creating framework there. There's something called Rocket file or something like that. But yeah, Docker was the people who introduced this, and it's Docker syntax is the one that's getting standardized at the moment. So that's like the future. So Docker versus VM. So if you didn't understand what I said earlier, if you look at that, VMs run on a hypervisor, whereas in Docker it's a container engine. And in the VMs, there's a guest OS, whereas Docker has wings and libs, which actually shares the kernel and stuff from the operating system, its underlying operating system itself. So it's very lightweight, and you can spin it up in seconds, whereas in a virtual machine it takes time to load, and there's a whole set of baggage comes with virtual machines. Whereas Docker is like virtual machines without the baggage, if I say. Yeah. So to simply put, yeah, you all notice the Nemo reference here. So see, this water is like the machine that's running, and the little fish are like isolated processes contained inside Docker containers. So that's how your application would run. And say one of the application crashes and hangs or something, it doesn't affect the rest of the application. Whereas in a VM, if you run all the services in a mesh or something, your whole VM is going to get screwed, and you have to restart your VM, or call a DevOps guy and blast the hell off of him, or do something like that. Yeah. So I hope this is simple enough for you. So this is Docker workflow. So basically, with Docker, you containerize your application with code. I will do a demo now in a bit, and you build it, and then you can ship it to a Docker Hub or Docker registry, you call it. You can have private registries or public registries, something like GitHub. So you can push the containerized application as an image to that repository, or registry. And then on the server itself, you don't need to have Git or anything. All you need to have is Docker installed. And you could easily deploy your application using the Docker register link which your application is shipped into. And it's done. Simple as that. And if you have a newer version, you could actually build it on your computer as a newer version and ship it. And you on the server side, on the production, whatever the VM or whatever you are running, SSH into it, and you can deploy the application. And this is like a simple process, but this is not how we do in production. There are other things like container orchestrators, stuff like that. So things you need to consider. So in a JavaScript perspective, what you need to consider. So when writing a Docker image, for a JavaScript application, size of the container actually matters. Smaller the better. You must have heard, in most cases, bigger the better, but yeah, in this case, smaller the better. And you have to think about the ports exposed. So in some cloud providers, in some, like if you take Google Kubernetes Engine, or other AWS Corps or something, some ports they actually don't allow you to connect through the internet, like port 25 stuff. So you have to make sure that the ports you expose are actually allowed by your provider to actually use. And also, another thing is make your application stateless as much as possible. Like say you are storing sessions on your node application. Don't store it in a variable as a global variable. Avoid global variables as much as possible. And store it in a DB or something. And make your application stateless. Because Docker is like an isolated process, it's containers. So the container might die down and a new container might restart. So in that case, your previous information will be lost. So you have to think about that when you're writing. So when you're migrating your code to Docker, think about that. Another very important one is remove sensitive information from code. You know, I have done hacking also a bit. So you know, one of the 101s in hacking is that if you want to hijack or hack some server or something, all you need to do is, like if you are looking for targets, you can basically go to GitHub and search username and password. And there are tons of PHP applications, Node.js applications, and you know other applications that has the IP address of the server, username and password all pushed into the repository which is public. You can easily hack into those and do stuff with the data. I mean, I don't do that, but anyone can do that. Yeah. So, and with Docker, it runs in layers. So when I'm doing the demo, I'll explain how the layers work. So if you add your passwords and usernames in Docker config file, it's gonna save it in the layers. And when you build the image and you push it to the repository, and if someone else runs the image, say they can actually access those credentials. And say in the newer version of the image you delete those credentials and re-push it back, still they can access that because Docker has a cache history, and you can actually get it from the previous layers. If you have the right tools, you could actually get them. So yeah, it's a bit of a complicated process, but it's a huge security risk. So don't ever use your passcodes and usernames and stuff in the Docker config file or in your code. Better to have them as pass them as environment variables when the container is running itself. So that way your application is much more secure. So what's next? So I hope you got a simple understanding of how containers and Dockers work. So what's next is container orchestration with Kubernetes, Docker Swarm. There's something with Netflix people call Titus. There are a lot of stuff out there, but Kubernetes is making its way out in the industry. I have myself been an Angular developer, and I have migrated to DevOps now. So Kubernetes is a huge deal, so if you have time, just look into it, because there are a lot of JS people out there, right? Okay, DevOps people are very less now. Good ones, yeah. And yeah, another thing with orchestration, containerizing application is, when you go to cloud provider and you do that, you could go serverless. Especially with Google, there's something called App Engine. You could actually give your Docker image to them, and your application would go serverless. That means that you don't have to worry about the traffic, or you don't have to worry about scaling it up, scaling it down. Google manages it automatically. And when there's a huge set of users accessing the application, it's going to automatically scale up, and it's going to handle the request. And then when there's less, it's going to scale down and stay cool. Yeah. And then there's CI/CD. That's also in the current setups. Who has CI/CD integrated with the applications at the moment? What do you guys use? Jenkins? GitLab with? GitLab CI/CD. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, GitLab, and yeah, there are runners, right? Yeah. Yeah. So with containerization, you could actually easily deploy a CI/CD pipeline. So you do a GitHub push or something, and automatically your application is going to get built, and then it's going to get automatically deployed into your DevOps production cluster. And as you see, the application is reloaded. The newer version is updated. That's how releases are shipped in Facebook, Google, everywhere. So all of these things, in the modern technologies, containerization plays a huge role. And yes, there are more. So if you are more interested in this, you are welcome for the next DevOps meetup. Yeah, search it on Meetup and join us. Yeah. So I'll go to the demo. So what I'm going to do here is actually show you guys how to run a container locally and do development inside a container rather than yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Docker file here. Docker file. And here we can start with the base image. So the base image, you can Google Docker node and you will get the node base image. So this is the node official repository for Docker. So they have a lot of tags here. I'm going to use the Alpine tag. Alpine is like the smallest Linux distribution that's available. That's about 10 MB of size. As I said, smaller the better. So better go with Alpine. So I'm going to say from node 8 Alpine. Alright. So this is our base image, so we can actually do other stuff with it. So hypothetically, if you are running a node application, you need nodemon, yeah? That's like the first thing we need, so I'm going to do it. So it's like configuring a VM actually. You say run npm i-g nodemon, and then you are going to create a work directory. You are going to create a directory so that your application could be in. So I'm going to create one mkdir. I'm going to say app, and then I'm going to create that as my work directory. So I'm going to do work directory. I'm going to say app. So for starters, let's start with this. Hypothetically, assuming that I don't have Node installed in my computer. All right. So how do I create one? So I'm going to do this. First, I'm going to do a Docker build. Docker build -t is for the name tag. I'm going to say and I'm going to do dot. Dot is saying that Docker file is in the source part, in the part that I'm in. It's going to quickly build. Yeah, I hope the internet is good. Alright, don't worry about the red mark, it's just warnings. It happens at NPM. I don't use Yarn, so yeah, I reject Facebook stuff a lot. So alright, so now to run this, you could say docker run, and now I'm gonna use the bash inside this particular container so that I could init my application and use the npm and everything. That's what I'm going to do is I'm going to run -id. Then I'm going to bind the volume. So bind the volume means, as I said, the containers are stateless, yeah? So whatever I install and stuff that I do, it's not going to get saved. Like say if I edit a code or package, if I do an npm install, package.json is going to get updated, yes? So because the container is stateless, although I do an npm install inside the container using SSH, although the package.json is updated, there's no way of me to actually retrieve that package.json, right? Because it's not going to reflect there. So for that, Docker has volume mounts, so you can mount a volume. So you do that by -v. I hope you can see that. And pardon me for the white interface. So I'm one of those guys who use the white interface instead of black. Yeah, I know I might learn in here. Yeah. So $t.vd for the working directory. In Windows, this might be different. And then you bind it for the place which is our app here. -app. And then I'm gonna give the name of the container, the name of the image that I built. I'm gonna say I'm gonna run bean. This particular image, Alpine Linux distribution, it doesn't have bash, it has sh. So I'm gonna run this. So I'm inside the application now. Here what I can do is I can do an npm init. Yes. Alright. So notice that the package.json got created here. This is my host machine, but I am inside the Docker container itself. Because of the volume mount, those two are connected, and the state is saved in my machine. Whatever the changes I do, it's saved here. So let's quickly do Express application. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do npm install Express save. Alright, Express is saved. So here now what I can do, I can create from here index.js const express. Server. What is it? Is it server or stuff? Luckily, I have a backup. I've not listened. Yeah, that was from yesterday. I've not listened. I guess about 3,000. Alright, so when you run this should work. So I'm going to exit the shell now because this one I did just for the sake of creating the Docker and creating the node npm, initializing the npm and everything. I'm going to exit this and I'm going to change the Docker file a bit. So we have the work dir now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do cmd. Say in order to make this start, I can say node say index.js, and before that I'm going to do copy. What this happens is the first dot is the initial wherever I run in the directory in my host machine. And the second dot is for this work directory is /i. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to run npmi here. Yeah, so this one is ready for production. So when you do a build here, this application is contained, and I'm going to do a build now, docker build. Alright, so this one, now this build is ready for production. This is containerized, and if you run this, I'm going to run this now. Docker run. I'm going to bind the port. The expose port here is 3000, so I'm going to say 3000 to this 3000, and then I'm going to give the name of the I'm running on localhost 3000. If I go to, hopefully this will work. I cannot get as expected. Go to hello world. So this is how you this is running completely isolated from the processes of my machine. And this is how you do a production build on Docker for containers, containerized JavaScript application. So if you want to develop now, you can do development as well. So I'm going to quit this running process. It's going to take some time. Sometimes MacBooks are troublesome. Alright, till that finishes because I'm running out of time as well. I'm gonna switch to the other project that I have made. So I will actually upload this stuff to GitHub and I'll share the link with you guys on the Meetup group. There's something called Docker Compose. So Dockerfile is basically like containerizing your application, whereas Docker Compose is about having multiple containers interconnected with each other. Like imagine you need a MySQL container or MongoDB container, and you have multiple microservices all in. You don't want to go through internet to connect to a local container. You want to connect it internally through the internal network. So that's where Docker Compose comes in. You could easily create services and you could do those. So image name is meetup node, build, context, Dockerfile, and you could volume mouse. And with environment, you could pass in environment variables. So you could get process.env.something, and you could get your environment variables inside the node application. And you could pass the node variables here. I guess that's it. You guys have one more thing. So this is about node applications. And for the Angular guys there, I have created another demo, which I'm not gonna do right now, but here you have, this Dockerfile is a bit different from the one I created earlier. This has two parts. This has a build part and the actual Docker container. So even the scenario where I said the Docker container should be smaller, alright? Take Angular for a second. Angular has a lot of libraries. React also has, yes. Angular also has a lot of libraries. So when you do a build, unless you're server-side rendering it, it's going to end up in HTMLs and JS, yeah? That's it. You don't want the rest of the dev dependencies and all the dependencies, you don't need it. So if we do ng build and if we use that container itself, the container is going to be a bit huge, right? Because of the node modules, the size of the node modules and everything. So what you can do is, here what you have done is, I have created from Node 8 Alpine as builder. You can create a builder. You can have two-part node Docker files. So here you build the application and you stop. From here you build the application and that's it. It's gonna get saved in the work-ready ngapp/list folder. Then you're starting another setup, another Docker image from Nginx Alpine. So you can have Nginx, and all you need to do is you are removing the default Nginx HTML, and then you are copying this one from builder. You are copying the list folder into the Nginx HTML here, and you run the Nginx daemon. And your application is as small as possible as it could be, and all is good. So that's about it. Yes, that's about it on my presentation. About React now. Yeah, one of the issues I find with React is that it's too opinionated. Like the marriage example was good, true, but marriages are necessary though. Yeah, if you don't marry, you're gonna end up a playboy, and your auntie's gonna hate you, your grandmother's gonna hate you, and they're gonna die miserably thinking that you have failed them in your life. So Angular is a framework that actually gives you a set of rules to follow. But in React, so many React apps I have seen that people have used so many things. There's no standard there. Right? A good developer would have standards, but in the community there are a lot of developers out there who use React because it's cool, and they don't follow proper standards, and the application ends up in a mess. Alright, and the developers who take over is going to have so much of headaches. Whereas in Angular, everything is structured. The way you create your components, the way you create your services, the data flow, everything is structured, and you get it right away. That's one of the I have nothing against React. I have done React projects as well, but that's one of the downfalls I see in React. Recently, I was working with React Native as well, and a friend of mine asked me, what's the navigator use? There are like 3 or 4 navigators for React, right? And I said, which one is the best one? I don't know. There's no documentation. In most cases, documentations are less. I mean, it was a headache for me. But again, for cross-platform development, React Native is the best tool I have used because Ionic, to be honest, is a mess. I don't use Ionic. Native script still has a long way to go. Flutter too, and Xamarin. I hate Microsoft. So yeah. So that's pretty much it. And one more thing with React and Angular comes default ships with TypeScript, and I love TypeScript. I mean, you can actually use TypeScript on React projects as well, but TypeScript allows you to. I have to tell you, right? You know what TypeScript is. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks. If you have any questions, you can ask now. Anything? Yeah. That's the Docker file. So Docker is like the framework or the company that, the technology behind it. So this file, the Docker file, is what is the spec to create your container. Whatever the container you create, it says, right? It's like, have you used Vagrant? Alright, so hypothetically think this is a VM, alright? So if you're configuring your VM, you would do the apt get installed, and you install the libraries and stuff like that, so your VM would work. So Docker is somewhat similar. With run, this is the base image, from this you could get Ubuntu or whatever the base image you want, and then run is the one where you run a command in the terminal shell. So with this, how you would consider a VM, you would apply those commands here with the word run in front of it. So that when you can create multiple containers. As if you create a VM, and if you want to create another VM of the similar state, you have to do it again and again. Yeah, you have to again run those commands, and you have to do it manually. But with Docker, with this configuration, you can have multiple containers, and everything would be working identically as each other. Yeah, so that's basically, yeah. Yeah. All you need is a Docker. You can do an apt get install Docker, and that's all you need on the server, nothing else. And you could do a run. I mean, this is like the starting point for you guys. But actually deploying the production level applications, there's something called Kubernetes. Search it up. So you could deploy these in clusters, so that you could have one cluster in US, one cluster in Australia, one cluster in India, and cluster node, and your application would run multiple instances on India, on Australia, and on US. And it will route your traffic accordingly to from where the users are coming. And scaling up and scaling down is pretty easy, because say there are suddenly a spike of 10,000 users, and you have only two instances up in your application. Because this config is there, you could spin off more applications quickly, and route those traffic into the other containers, and your user base, your users will get the efficient result that you are looking for in your application. So that's a lot to actually go through with Docker. Docker is like the starting point, this containerization. There's serverless, there's Unicorn also now coming now. A lot of things in the future. This is the starting point. So because you are JS developers, I suggest you take a look at running your applications containerized in production, and see how you could implement Kubernetes or something around it. So you'll have a better user experience when it comes to applications. Yeah? It does for JavaScript right now, because you have NVM. To be honest, no, because of NVM. But hypothetically, imagine a situation you didn't have NVM. This can help you massively. And I work with Google a lot, so gcloud. I don't know. Has anyone worked with gcloud here? Alright, so with gcloud you have to set service keys, and project and everything. It's a mess. It's troublesome. So I use a container to make it easier so that the container is isolated and it has a particular Google project and the Google login inside, and I could do that because all of us have more than one Gmail, right? Google haven't thought of that when they created the G Cloud CLI. You could only log in once, and if you have to log out again and log in again, it's a pain in the ass. So with containers, that solves a huge issue for me. So yeah, that's pretty much it. But apart from the NVM, if you are doing Python or something, especially Python, the virtual environment is a pain in the ass for me. I don't know about you guys whether you have done Python or not. And so many libraries affecting each other and stuff like that. But containerizing a Python development environment with Docker is makes your development very easy, and also at the end of the day you could remove the image, and all the libraries installed and everything would get deleted and your storage would come back to you. So that's another thing. So that's pretty much it, yeah.
I'd just like to add, if you're a developer and working as a team with different machines, different specs, Docker will help unify everyone on the same image, same requirements, same everything. Yeah, so it's easy to onboard another developer, another computer, things like that.
Thanks, man.